first of all, I wanted to say thanks again to Inspired Leaders and all the sponsors. So would you guys give them a hand clap, please? When Elizabeth asked me to talk, I took it as a great responsibility because I think everybody who's a leader, who in here is a leader? Everybody's hand should go up. I saw a little dinosaur hand back there. Everybody's hand should go way up. Yeah. So I think it's I take it very responsible when somebody asks me to talk about leadership, because as a leader, you have followers and it's a responsibility. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about my background. I joined the Navy as a Navy corpsman, or corpsman, whichever way you want to call it. I did that back in 1999. And corpsmen are stationed with, they're in the Navy, but they're stationed with the Navy and the Marine Corps. They run around with the Marines. So I got the opportunity to spend 5 years running around with the Marines. I did a deployment to Iraq with them, had a great experience. I had my share of struggles and tough times, but I had a great experience. I'm going to tell you about one. After that, I got out of the military because I didn't want to be told what to do ever again. You think that worked out?
Are you married?
Yes. Nice. She's a great woman. I didn't want to be told what to do, and I wanted to make $1 million by the time I was 25. And then I extended that to 30, and then 35. And I'm still pushing that out there. My focus is a little different now. After I got out, I went into sales for 10 years. And after being in sales for 10 years and doing okay, doing pretty good, I really started missing being in service. So I started a nonprofit back in 2014, and shortly after that I took a position as an associate pastor at the Ark Church. And I spent 2 years as a pastor there. I really felt towards the end of last year that God was calling me, nudging me to take a leap of faith, and so I did January 1st, and it's been an incredible experience. So we've got a lot of good people in here that care about our community. I want to pause for a second, and I want to ask everybody for the next 25 minutes to really engage with me. And I want you guys to take all your crap, okay, your junk. I'm talking about the emails and the bills that you got to pay, maybe a sick kid, maybe a fight with an in-law. Take all that stuff and toss it out the window. And be with me for 30 minutes, and we're going to do some good stuff, okay? I want to start with are you guys okay with that? You guys will take all that stuff and get rid of it. Good. I want to start with 2 stories. The first one was of me when I was 11 years old. It was my 11th birthday, and my mom always did a really good job with birthday parties. She had all the presents, we had all the people there. I remember it very vividly, like it was yesterday. I remember my dad brought a birthday card, and he had $11 bills in it. And I remember there was a beautiful model there. She was 26 years old, had a huge crush on her. The only reason it didn't work out with us is because apparently she was dating Bruce Willis. We lived close to Hollywood. That's the only reason it didn't work out. But what stood out about this day is at the end of my birthday party, everybody left. My mom came to me and she said, "Hey, Terry, I'm going on a trip for 2 weeks." And I was sad because I'd never been away from my mom for 2 weeks. And I said, okay. And I went over to my dad's house. My mom and dad were separated, and she left their boyfriend for 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks later, I get a phone call at my grandparents' house. And I remember it was on a Saturday, and they hand me the phone, and my mom says, "Hey, I have good news. Me and my boyfriend are getting married, and we're going to stay gone for another week." And I thought to myself, oh man, I'm going to really miss my mom. So I was sad, but I was happy for her. Another week goes by, same instance, I was at my grandparents' house. She calls me, and I could see somber looks on people's face. And when my mom gets on the phone, she says, "Terry, I have some really bad news for you." She says there was never a trip, and there was never a marriage, and there was never a honeymoon, but in fact, I was put in prison. I'm going to be gone for 5 years. I was put in prison for an interstate drug deal, and I'm going to be gone for 5 years. And that really marked my life forever. I'll never forget it. Now, good news is we're close now. She serves the Lord, and she's a good example. The other story takes place in Iraq, and it was in 2002, just after we had breached the berms from northern Kuwait to Iraq. So if you guys imagine, there's between northern Kuwait and southern Iraq, there's these massive sand berms, and we were staged, ready to enter the country, and there was these big D7 dozers that came up and pushed the berm open, and then all the forces went through. And a couple days into my trip of following division are the frontline Marines, and they would advance and we would hop behind them. A couple days into that trip, our company commander said, we're going to be laid over on the side of the road for 5 days. And I thought to myself, we've got 1,000 men and women and a bunch of vehicles, and we're going to be laid over on the side of the road like sitting ducks for 5 days? I said, yes. So we get over to the side of the road, we pop our tents, and we camp out. And about 2 days into the trip, a friend of mine named HM3 Rezik comes up to me, and he says, hey, Terry, I have an idea. There's a nearby village, and all the medical personnel have fled from the hospitals, so they really need help. You and me, let's sneak away in the ambulance, just us two corpsmen, and go help these guys. And I thought to myself, you want us to leave all the Marines, and all the guns, and all the tanks, and sneak away to help these people who are technically our enemies? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, let's do it. Bad decision-making process back then, very young, okay? So we jump in our ambulance, and I don't know how we snuck away. Still to this day, I can't remember the details, but we snuck away from the base. And we drive over to this nearby village, and as we approach, there's a big red cross on our ambulance, just two corpsmen with 2 9mm. We jump out, and all these women and children begin to approach us. And they knew what we were there for because we had the red cross on our ambulance, right? So as they come near us, we begin to triage them. That's what we did. We looked for the worst cases who need help. So after a couple hours of taking care of people, bandaging them up, giving them antibiotics and medication, I noticed out of the corner of my eye, there's a blue pickup truck that's racing towards us. And I look at my buddy Rezik, and I said, dude, we got trouble. Watch out. So here we are helping the Iraqis, preparing for a battle. And as these guys get closer, I peer through the window, and I could see that they weren't there for trouble. And they began to slow their vehicle down, and they came closer to me, and they opened the passenger side window. And a frail man stepped out of the vehicle. This man right here, his name was Muhammad. He stepped out of the vehicle, and he came over to me, and he pulled up his pant leg, and he had a massive wound on his leg that was 2 weeks old. Apparently he'd been bitten by a dog, and he had necrotic tissue, and he lost a bunch of weight, and he was febrile, and we said, this guy's in the worst shape here, so we got to take care of him. So we proceeded to take care of him. We popped an IV bag right there in the truck, hung it from his little coat hanger, gave him 1,000 milligrams of Ancef, took off the dead skin, wrapped it up, gave him my antibiotics. It took about half an hour. But after we got done, he walks over to us, and this is what changed my life forever, marked me forever. And he hugged us. And in broken English, he told us, thank you. And I don't know why, but I will never forget that moment. Because we went out of our way to serve somebody, and for some reason, my life was changed forever. And I want to suggest that everybody who's a leader, has this innate ability to mark the lives of others and change them forever. Every single one of us in here. And I want us to, for a minute, do a quick little exercise to prove that out to me, but I need you guys to trust me, okay? So I want everybody in the room to close their eyes for 30 seconds, and I want you to think back to a time, maybe in your childhood, maybe in your when you were a young adult, or maybe in your adulthood, that somebody did something or said something to you that marked your life forever. Would you guys do that? Go ahead and close your eyes and go there with me. How many of you guys got something? How many of you guys can remember a point in time where your life was marked forever? By a show of hands. How many? Almost everybody in the room has had a time when their life was marked forever. That's right. And maybe it's good and maybe it's bad. I hope that it's good. But as leaders, we have the ability to mark the lives of others forever. So how do we do that? How do we begin to do that? Change people's lives forever. I believe there's 2 principles that we can use, and I'm going to talk about them. The first, now let me explain the difference between a principle and like 7 easy steps, or a principle and like 4 habits, or a way of doing things. A principle is the same today as it is 10 years from now. And it's the same today as it was 1,000 years ago. And it stands the test of time. It doesn't change. That's what a principle is. And there's 2 principles that I want to share with you guys that I believe we can all use as leaders to mark the lives of others forever. The first one is to find a good leader and follow him or her. Find a good leader and emulate that leader. Now, all of us can identify leaders, but that's the first principle. And I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine. This is a friend that I grew up with. I met him when I was probably 14 years old. We wrestled in high school together. He was brilliant, and he was a stud. And he beat everybody in wrestling. He was the captain of the team. He, after graduating top of his class in high school, he went away to med school, came home, married a beautiful lady, bought a massive house and a sports car. And I began to think, this guy can't lose. He can't lose. And what's different about my life than his? And then a couple of years ago, and quite honestly, I began to get jealous and think, what is he doing that I'm not? And a couple of years ago, I went out to visit with him, a very good friend of mine. And he told me after I was there for a day or so, he said, Terry, my marriage is failing. And just a couple years earlier, I got the opportunity to marry him and his wife. And so my heart sank, and I started to think, man, what can I do to help this guy, to be a leader? What's the best thing that I can say to give to this person, to try to mark his life forever, to help him out of this crisis? And I said, Tam, do you know about, are you a faithful guy? Do you know about faith? Do you have a faith? And he said, well, I was a Buddhist, but then I converted because I couldn't get over the reincarnation thing, and now I'm an atheist. And I said, Tam, do you know about Christ? Do you know about Christ? Do you know his story? And he says, well, I've researched him, and I know that if nothing else, I've spent time looking at him, researched him online and read some books. If nothing else, he's one of the greatest leaders of all time. And that came from an atheist. And that rocked me. And I said, wow. So I want to suggest that we need to find a leader. And this is my greatest leader. This is the person that I go to learn from. I study his book, and he's a paradoxical leader. He says things like, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, which is completely backwards from what we think we should do when somebody hurts us, right? We want to ball up and hurt them back. He's a paradoxical leader. He never wrote a thing, but there's more writings about his life than any other person on earth. Is that incredible? Never wrote a book, but he's got the best-selling book of all time. Now, whether you believe in Jesus or not, what I want to suggest is he's one of the greatest leaders of all time. And that's the principle that I've used. I found a leader, and I want to follow him. I want to emulate him and do the things that he does. There's a story about him, Jesus, and it happens in John 21, 15 to 17, and it's right after he was resurrected from the cross. He goes out and he finds his disciples fishing, and he calls them to the shore. Do you guys remember this? He asked Peter, one of his favorite disciples, he says, Peter, do you love me? Now, this was right after he went to the cross and Peter denied him 3 times. But he never brought that up. He just said, Peter, do you love me? And Peter looks at him and he says, Jesus, you know I love you. And Jesus says, serve others. And then he asks him a second time. And he doesn't repeat himself many times in the scripture. He says, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, you know everything, Lord. You know that I love you. And he says, then serve others. And then he asks him a 3rd time. He denied him 3 times. He asked him 3 times in a row. He says, Peter, do you love me? And it says in the scripture that Peter was grieved. And then he started to tear up and break up. And he says, Lord, you know that I love you. And he says, then serve my people. That's the first principle. Now, he didn't say, if you love me, I want you to take my cross. Or what he said was, if you love me, serve others. Pretty paradoxical, right? If you love me, serve others. So find a leader is the first principle. The second principle that I want to talk about, so finding a leader and follow him, first principle. Secondly, the principle that I want to talk about is using our own unique gifts. And this is what I mean. I could never come in here and compete with Merrick or Elizabeth on their gifts. And that would be silly. I would never try to emulate what they're doing because they're using their unique gifts to share with the world. So here's what I mean. There's a scripture, it's 2 Peter 4:10. It says, each of us was given special gifts, and we should use those gifts and be a good steward of them, be a responsible leader of them, and we should serve others. Notice it doesn't say if you were given a special gift. It says each of us was given a special gift. So each one of us in here is uniquely made. And we're made with gifts unlike anybody else, and we should use those. It says to steward them well and serve others. So what do we do with this? What do we do with this? Well, first you need to identify your gifts and you need to use them to serve others. That's what I suggest. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I used my unique gifts to serve others. In 2014, I began to wonder, well, what are my unique gifts and how can I serve the community? I'd really missed being in service. So I was a veteran and I was an entrepreneur. I always wanted to start a business. That's why I left the medical field. And I was a business guy. I got a business degree. I always wanted to start a business. So I'm entrepreneurial. I got this veteran background. And I always wanted to start a business, and I loved leaders. I wanted to follow the greatest leader for the rest of my life. So I thought, what could I use with my special gifts? So I started VEL Institute back in 2014. And everything that's good starts humble. Everything that's good. And you gotta persevere. You gotta persevere to make it good. So this is our second leadership development course. In the first, I believe there were 6 people. This is our second leadership development course. We were holding it in my chiropractor's office up off of 1488, Dr. Evan Pulver's office. We would meet every week for 10 weeks straight, and we would study leadership, and we would talk about how we're going to apply these principles to our life. And we just kept on doing that. And we made it better. We kept on holding those. I came to a place in 2015 after doing this leadership development stuff. I was a full-time pastor, and I got so busy, and things started to grow. We were holding keynotes, that I decided that I needed to put something down. Either I was going to leave my pastoral role or I was going to shut VEL down. And I was torn because I had to put my pastoral role first. And the baby that I started was dying without me. So it's probably one of the best things that happened to me. And this is a great principle too. You can do really good on your own. But with a team, you can kill it. You can do incredible things. So I came to a breaking point and I said, I'm either shutting this thing down or I'm going to find some help. And I was vulnerable to people. I said, hey, I really need help with this. We've got a good thing going. I need help. So I recruited a couple guys. Over here on the left is Will Holder, and on the right is Charles Noonan. This was at Bob Milner's keynote back in 2015, and we had Gordy Brunch there. So I began to recruit people to help me. Ross, you were there. And everything changed. Once I was able to give up the baby and ask people to help and give up ownership, man, things exploded. Things exploded. So after that, we started holding more leadership development programs, and here's a picture of us in 2016. We had to move out of the chiropractor's office and move into Mercedes-Benz and use their conference space. Trevor, you're in that picture? Here's a picture of us in 2017. We had to move into the local community college. There's some people in there. Angela, you're in there. Elizabeth, you're in there. Yeah.
You can find me.
We also started holding keynotes. How many of you guys have been to one of our keynotes in here? Yeah, there's a good group of people. This is back in 2015. So we bring in these great speakers, and this night was incredible. We had an outstanding speaker. His name's Chris Westfall. He came in, but we were brand new at this. We didn't know what we were doing. We had people show up for this keynote speaker. What we didn't know is the gate to this venue closed at 7 p.m. So we had people showing up, having hop gates to get in. It was a complete disaster. It felt like a bonehead. But we just kept on going, kept on persevering, and our team got better. Here's a picture of our keynote in 2016. We moved over to Anadarko and did a couple there, and it grew. It started growing. Here's a picture of our keynote in Q1 of 2018, and this is at the community center. We had 120 people at this one. We've had 2 since. So it just began to continue growing. Let me see if I can play this. This is kind of where we're at now.
Fancy buttons in this place. That's
I think this will play. Oh, here we go. Stand by.
You're just teasing us.
There we go. There's something. Paris get that? So we just continue to grow and keep on pushing through, okay? And I want to suggest that everybody in here can begin to mark the lives of others forever when we tap into fallen leaders and using our unique gifts. And this is really the paradox of serving others. And we've seen too many people that from the outside look like they have everything. They have success, they have money, they have fame, and they implode. So I believe that when we begin to serve others, that this paradox of serving and giving of our gifts begins to change us too. We can mark others' lives, and our lives can improve also. I'm going to wrap up with a couple stories. One of them's a story of Dr. Dave Anderson. Anybody familiar with that name? He's an entrepreneur. He founded Grace School of Theology. This is a story about him about 30 years ago. He was getting tennis lessons from somebody that was about 20 years younger than him. His name was Dwight. And he was trading tennis lessons for discipleship. Kind of a cool deal, right? So one day, they were leaving the tennis court, and Dr. Dave Anderson, a very wise man, about 30 years senior to Dwight, looked over at Dwight, and he said, Dwight, you know, there's two things on this earth that'll last forever. You know what those are, Dwight? Anybody want to take a stab at those? Two things on this earth that'll last for eternity. Dwight said he didn't want to take a stab at it. That's good. Here's the two things that'll last for eternity. The Word of God and the souls of men. Now that's me suggesting the two things. That came from Dr. Anderson 35 years ago. And that's an example of what we say and do to other people still being told today. I believe those are the only things on this earth that will last forever. The souls of men and the Word of God. Last story. You guys know Josh Cherry? Anybody know Josh Cherry in here? He came to me about 7 months ago. We were doing some networking stuff. And he said, hey, Terry, I'm running an Ironman. And I took a quick look at him and I said, are you sure, man? And then I began to watch him over the next couple months. And he began to transform because he was running 30 miles and he was biking some crazy amount, like 100 miles, and he was swimming. And I thought to myself, man, this guy's going to do it. So I decided that I was going to volunteer for the Ironman and help him and encourage him. So there I am the day of the Ironman, and I'm on the 8-mile mark of the run. So these guys have already swam like 3 miles, biked like 100 miles, and they're coming to their 8-mile mark, right? It looked like they'd been hit by a truck. So after being there for 2 hours, handing out drinks and refreshments, I start to get worried because I didn't see Josh. I'm thinking, man, he must have messed himself up, and he's not going to make it. So I was worried for him. So after another half an hour, I catch Josh running down the hill out of the corner of my right eye, and I turn and I look at him, and I got scared because he looked like he had been hit by a train. And I thought to myself, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And with all my might and strength, I reached over and I grabbed a cup of yellow Gatorade and I handed it to him and I said, go Josh. And then I began to look at the other leaders that were out there. And when their friends would come by, they would cheer them on. And they'd run with them. And they say, you're going to do this. You're going to make this. And I knew in that moment that I missed a huge opportunity to encourage Josh. And when I handed him that Gatorade, it wasn't even good. It was the yellow stuff. It tastes like cough medicine. He looked at me like... he just ran off. And I totally missed an opportunity. So I want to end today with a challenge. And I want everybody to join me in this challenge. And if you will, by the end of the day, I want you to, everybody in here knows somebody who's struggling, going through a tough time, an Ironman in their life. Through cancer, through a marriage breakup, their kid may have ran away from home. There's no shortage of troubles in this world. And I've had a ton. And I'm not perfect. I want us to join together, and that by the end of the day, if you'll join me by sending a text message or an email, or maybe picking up the phone and calling somebody, or maybe going to their house or getting a coffee with them, encourage that person that you know that's struggling. Would you guys do that by the end of the day? I'm going to do it too, so just raise your hand if you'll join me in doing that. And I want to see if we can't just prove this out and mark the lives of others forever. I believe we can do that as leaders today. That's all I've got. Thank you.